our contact information with Michelle's email address, and you can certainly email her your questions. And this slide just indicates if you have your iPhone, if you have an iPad or your computer, again, if you go to participant, click your name, and you can raise your hand, and a little blue hand will come up. And then when you're done, just go ahead and lower it. And over here, you can come through it a different way. The 3 dots on the right, you can hit that. Okay, for tonight, Upper Pottsgrove Township, myself, Renee, Dave, Kathy, Martin for the commissioners, Michelle Reddick is our township manager, Chuck Gardner, solicitor, Chris Pelka is the township engineers, Mark Feller is our special counsel, so is Liz, Ben, Scott, and John, all from Ben and Scott from PFM, and John Beeler, our township sewer committee chair. Also from American Water, we have Bernie, Keith, John, Elizabeth, Jim, Mike, Maggie, and you can see their offices right here. Bernie will be leading the conversation for American Water. And Bernie, whenever you need to have one of your guys talk, we'll make sure they're unmuted and just identify the name. And tonight we have a slide presentation, questions and answers, and then at the end we want to advertise the ordinance, and to do that we have to allow the solicitor to do that, and Chuck will explain that towards the end. So with that said, go ahead, Ben, take the slides, if you could, please.
How's that? There, can you see that good, Trey?
Yep, looks good.
Okay.
Everybody okay?
Yep.
All right.
Martin, is that you?
Yes, it is.
Okay, we got
Hey,
Martin
Martin.
on.
Martin's on regular?
Yeah,
Yes,
he's on
yeah.
regular, yep.
Okay.
We were getting a lot of feedback on my phone, so that's good.
Okay. Scott, you there?
All set?
Yep.
All right. Well, again, good evening, everyone. So this is going to be a little bit of a tag team effort. So this is Scott Shear with PFM, and also sometimes from PFM, Ben Kappenstein and John Fry may be participating. And then from Pennsylvania American Water, Bernie Grandusky will be leading the charge with his team, and maybe handing it off to some of his other colleagues as well. So we kind of view this as a tag team approach this evening between PFM and Pennsylvania American Water. So with that, Ben, first slide, please. So just a little bit of background regarding the exploration of the sewer sale. So back in early 2019, PFM was engaged first to do a preliminary kind of high-level valuation of the system, just to sort of start the process, at least with outside professionals, of exploring possibly selling the sanitary sewage collection system. I think prior to that, there was quite a bit of discussion internally at the township, but early 2019 is when it started with outside parties. And we'll hear more about this through the entire presentation, but in the middle of page 2, there were a few main reasons to kind of put this on the table, that the board had begun and the administration to explore the potential sale. And we kind of outline at a high level what the main items were. The first is in 2A, retiring debt of approximately $8.5 million, and that's as of the end of 2019. That debt consists of both sewer debt, general fund debt, and open space debt. So it's the entire debt portfolio of the township. Another kind of big issue that a lot of municipalities around the state are faced with is funding their unfunded pension liability. It's a very critical component of the township's budget and can sometimes put a lot of stress on it. And so right now there's about a $1.7 million unfunded liability. And so the goal is to fund the pension plan to fully fund that. Therefore, by reducing that unfunded liability, that will substantially reduce the annual obligation that the township has to pay. And that's on an ongoing annual basis. Also in 2C, the township has been kind of studying and doing some due diligence on some possible infrastructure projects due to some of its deterioration of some of its buildings. Some estimates that we're currently seeing are somewhere around $4 million for those projects that, again, we'll talk talk more about that, but a pretty substantial capital improvement plan that the township is looking at. 2D, eliminate the township's exposure to capital spending, and that's related to the sewer. So obviously, whenever there's expansions and needed work done to the sewer system, there is quite a bit of expense needed to do that. And then lastly, regarding the sewer system as well, basically eliminate the risk. One of the key items here, and it's just not Upper Pottsgrove, but it's many municipalities around the state and outside looking at kind of shifting the risk over to another very qualified operator to eliminate that risk for potential system failure or any other issues that may come down the road, including potentially quite a few mandates from the state. So again, those were the main kind of reasons for the exploration, and we'll get a little bit in more detail here throughout the presentation. The bottom of page 2. So after kind of the long process that the township embarked on, ultimately in February of this year, PFM on behalf of the township issued a request for bid for the potential sale. At that point, there were 2 interested parties, Pennsylvania American Water and Aqua. Pennsylvania American Water ultimately submitted the highest bid of $13,750,000. So of kind of the numbers that you see throughout this presentation and indicative rates you see throughout this presentation, it will be based on the high bid from Pennsylvania American Water of $13,750,000. Page 3, again, just gives a little bit more background of some of the key milestone dates. There were other, I think, updates with the board throughout this process. But again, back in the early part of 2019, we were engaged. And then in May, we had presented our limited scope valuation to the township to basically see if it's worthwhile to pursue this any further and send out an RFQ and an RFP to ultimately get to where we are today. Obviously, the decision was to proceed at that point in time. So in June, we released our request for qualifications to see who was interested in the system. We received those back towards the end of June. We qualified the bidders and signed various confidentiality agreements, allowed the bidders into a very robust data room back in late June. And then basically July through February, the team consisting of a lot of different professionals, lawyers, engineers, and others that we may hear from later this evening, were all part of the transaction, along with a lot of time spent with the board and administration on negotiating various documents and providing meetings or providing tours and conducting meetings with the bidders for, again, for our team, for the township's team to conduct due diligence as well as the bidders to conduct their due diligence as well. Ultimately, as I mentioned on the prior page, in early February, we released a request for bids to the 2 interested parties, received the bids March 16th. 2 of there was what's called a BAFO, best and final offering, where the first place and second place bidders were very close together. So it was extended for a few more days. And ultimately then on March 20th, we received the BAFO proposals. We then had an executive session with the board at the end of March, including the high bidder here. And now the month of April, we intend to have these various public presentations, one conducted already on Monday, this evening here, which is the 8th, and then next week, 14th and 16th, we plan to conduct a few additional presentations. And then ultimately, on April 20th, there would be a consideration of the ordinance to approve the sale. If this does move forward, financial close would probably occur about a year from now. There's a lengthy PUC process that we can get into later in the presentation, but more than likely we could probably plan on close to a year before the transaction would actually close. On page 4, Bernie, would you like to give a little background?
Well, certainly would, Scott. Thank you. Thank you to the supervisors for inviting us to be able to present tonight's virtual meeting. Along with myself, I have 7 other associates representing different functions within the business. So if some certain specific questions come up, we can call on them. But a little bit about Pennsylvania American Water. So Pennsylvania American Water is actually the largest investor-owned water wastewater company in Pennsylvania. We serve approximately 2.4 million of the population in PA in 36 of the 67 counties So we're right around 20% of the population of Pennsylvania receives their water or wastewater service from our company. Locally, or I'm sorry, from a customer basis, we have a total of 740,000 customers across the state. And that's broken down between water and wastewater. We have 660,000 water customers and 74,000 wastewater customers. Pennsylvania American is a wholly owned subsidiary of American Water Works. American Water Works is the largest publicly traded water and wastewater company in the United States. It actually trades under the stock exchange number AWK. It is a member of the S&P 500, so if anybody has retirement funds in an S&P index, you are a part owner of American Water. But Pennsylvania American is one of 14 other states. They're regulated in those states. They're called regulated operations. Pennsylvania is one of the largest under the American Water umbrella. And that's important from a perspective that American Water, as our parent company, will consolidate various items of the business, including spend on materials, on pipe, on power, chemicals, and we'll aggregate that under the umbrella of American Water and drive efficiencies in the bidding process, warranties, vehicles, that's get the cost efficiencies get pushed directly back down through the customer. So it's an advantage of being a part of the American Water family. Locally, though, we are nearby and to the township. So to due west, we have approximately 2 or 3 miles. We call it our Glen Alsace, which is essentially our Exeter Township, Amity Township water system. That water system currently serves 9,000 water customers. Late last year, the company acquired the Exeter Township wastewater system, which is approximately 8,000 customers in Exeter Township and other small portions of other municipalities. So we have about 17,000 customers to the west. Those facilities are serviced by about 19 employees on water and wastewater. To the east, we have our Royersford operation. That's a regional water system. And our Royersford system serves about 17,000 customers in the greater Royersford area, including Limerick, Spring City, Upper Providence, Royersford Borough. And the company also has the Borough of Royersford's wastewater system under agreement to acquire in the latter part of this year or early 2021. So we have a very large presence locally. The Royersford system would be another 18,000 customers and about 13 employees. So between the two, we have a coverage area of about 32 local employees. Across Pennsylvania, we employ over 1,100 employees across the state to provide the water and wastewater service throughout the Pennsylvania. Those employees consist. We have a regional and a corporate headquarters in Mechanicsburg. We have state presidents, vice presidents, engineering, fully functional and staffed engineering group, operations, HR, accounting, typical business structure in Pennsylvania. So we're a water and wastewater utility, and our primary function, is to own assets. We have over $4 billion worth of assets as a company. And over the last 5 years, we've invested actually about $1.3 billion into our system to upgrade water and wastewater infrastructure. When last year, I think the number was between 300 and 400 million. So we're putting money back into the pumps, plants, pipes of all our systems. We're looking at areas where we want to work with communities to extend water or wastewater service to communities that might have failing on lots or to support development. We stay in compliance with all the rules and regulations. So we're in the Chesapeake Bay area. We're in compliance with the Chesapeake Bay mandates. We have a rigorous replacement program. We're replacing pipes from the water side and our collection system pipes. And we're trying to stay ahead of the maintenance curve so that we can continue to provide reliable water and wastewater service. And obviously, we're also investing heavily in our treatment capacity, whether we own the plants or if we have to purchase capacity to provide service to our communities. And then, one thing I wanted to hit on is that our company, like the township and like other municipal water and wastewater systems, are, we all have the same environmental regulator, DEP, EPA. Their rules and regulations are the same for a privately owned system as they are for a publicly owned system. And with the goal to achieve regulatory compliance and surpass regulatory compliance. And we have a pretty good track record of being low to no compliance issues. It's very important. It's reflected based on the amount of capital that we'll put into our system. But something that's new, or would be new if the township were to sell to us, would be that we're also regulated by the Pennsylvania Public Utility Commission. And they have oversights on rates as well as customer service. So only the Public Utility Commission can set the rates for companies like ours. When we do want to adjust rates, we have to file for a rate increase. It's typically a statutory process that takes between 9 and 12 months. It's a very public process. We have public meetings. The public's encouraged to attend and comment. Municipal officials comment, elected officials. We also, within our regulated scheme, there are agencies set up for consumer advocacy and consumer protection. So we have the Office of Consumer Advocate, who's set up to protect the residential ratepayers. We have the Office of Small Business Advocate, who oversees businesses. And the state has a Bureau of Investigation and Enforcement arm, which also monitors water companies to make sure that the investment is just and reasonable. And we'll have the burden of proof to prove that for any rate increase that we would employ across the board. So we have a lot more information. If you want it, if you're interested in our websites, very a lot of good educational material, a lot of more about who we are and where we are. But that's a quick oversight of PA American. So I'll work through the next slide. So the procurement that was set up that American Water, Pennsylvania American Water, participated in and bid to had a requirement that the winning bidder would actually accept as upper Pottsgrove rates, a rate that's lower than what's currently being charged today. So we've agreed to do that as part of the bidding process. And as you can see on this graph, that rates are actually going to be lowered from where they are at $71 and change to a flat rate of $65. And that'll occur at or before, likely before closing. And what we were asked to do was provide a indicative projection of what rates may be over the next 8 years. And the bar graph indicates that. We'll caveat that a couple things. One, it's indicative. And any future rate increase would have to go through and be approved by the Public Utility Commission. But what we're expecting is those rates would be at the $65 rate, at least until 2022. And then afterwards, we would expect to see rate adjustments that would reflect the township's residents being consolidated with our rate customers. One of the advantages we can bring as an owner is that, under utility regulation, we have the ability to spread our costs across our customer base for water and wastewater. So, the township will go from having to support a wastewater system with 1,500 customers to having over 740,000 customers be able to support, the investment and the cost of owning and operating the utility system. So the graph again is indicative. Historically, we've seen about a 3 to 4% increase. So this is a little bit on the higher end from an indicative standpoint. Could change, but we wanted to be as open with the township as we could based on an indication of potential future rates and under our ownership.
Thanks, Bernie. So kind of dovetailing from the previous slide that Bernie just went over, we thought it'd be helpful just to give a little bit of historical perspective with Upper Pottsgrove sewer rates. Basically went back to 1978, which was more or less the longest period that we could get data for. And this graph kind of shows where the rates kind of gone from 1978 to current. You see a couple of the highlighted sections we have in there where there was a very large increase in around 1992, 1993 area, and another large increase of about 71% in the mid 2000s as well. So there in the blue box, we're showing the kind of a couple different ways to calculate an average increase over that duration. The straight average was about a 6.03% average increase over that duration. And if you calculate it via a CAGR or compound annual growth rate, it was about 4.64%. So we thought it'd help put things in perspective for where the township has been here over this long period of time with their average rate increases, as well as how that compares to the indicative potential rate increases that will ultimately set by the PUC that Bernie had just reviewed on the prior page.
So regarding slide 7, there's some specifics under the Pennsylvania American ownership that we did want to highlight. In the first section, we were made aware of and performed due diligence to understand that the township, in dealing with the Department of Environmental Protection and under their Act 537 plan, which is the plan that governs where wastewater will be provided within a municipality, there was identified areas within the township that would require public wastewater service. So the company, as part of the bid, is planning on and will step into the completion of the Regal Oaks Phase 2, Horseshoe and Bruce Drives project, and the Continental and Old Orchard Drive projects. We plan to, under our ownership, step into those projects. Like if they're already designed, we'd be jumping into the design and getting into the construction, or doing the design and construction under our ownership. One nuance to that will apply is that under our PUC regulated environment, under our tariff, which is the doctrine that includes our rates, rules, and regulations, our company does not charge a tapping fee when we run water lines to existing homes or businesses. So that's a difference that exists today. The township residents and residents that would be associated with this project, had the township done it, would pay what is the tapping fee currently of $5,447. Under Pennsylvania American ownership, and for these projects, we do not charge a tap-in fee. In addition to that, then, if there are other homes, existing homes or businesses that wanted to connect to an existing line, they also would be charged the fee. The only fee we charge is in relation to new homes or development. So think of a new developer-owned subdivision or a building built from the ground up with no occupancy permit. For those types of homes, we do charge what we call a capacity fee of $4,000 per EDU, and in most cases that's a pass-through done by the developer. So we did want to be clear that there is a difference under our ownership. We feel it's a beneficial difference, particularly to folks that won't have to pay what otherwise would have been a connection fee. And in addition to that, when a wastewater line is installed under these projects, the company Pennsylvania American will actually pay for the not only the wastewater line, but a portion of the service line or lateral that go to the customer's home. So from the main to the property line, the company pays for that piece of the lateral, and then it's the customer's obligation to pick it up from there and bring it to the house with their plumber. So another difference in payment structure.
All right. So on slide 8, obviously we heard, kind of got a good feel of, how this sale will kind of impact potentially the rates. Again, those ultimately need to be set by the PUC, so it's just indicative rates. We just heard a lot of good things about the connection fees. or the tap fees related to ownership under Pennsylvania American as well. Obviously, a lot of value in that. We thought page 8 would be good. It'd be good to kind of put some dollars, kind of quantify a little bit some of the homeowner benefits with selling the system. And earlier on, I think it was on page 2, when we were talking about some kind of the main goals that the township had set out, or some of the main reasons why they embarked on the exploration of the system. One of them was to look at raising funds or eliminating the need to raise funds for some capital improvements in the township to some of their buildings. And so this slide here basically just illustrates that assuming the transaction would close, say roughly $4 million would be set aside to fund these projects instead of having to go out and issue debt to fund these projects. So in 1A, where it says at least $4 million in projects or $285,000 per year in annual debt service. So if the township went out and borrowed $4 million today and paid back over a 20-year period of time, the principal and interest due, similar to your own mortgage, would be about $285,000 per year. And so what the table does below is it puts that in perspective of kind of a typical or an average homeowner in the township, assuming $175,000 assessed value. We can then all interpolate if the assessed value would be lower or higher, but it gives you a general idea that that would be basically a real estate tax equivalent over on the far right-hand side of that blue box of about $183. So pretty significant benefit by not having to issue the debt to fund those various projects. So again, that's kind of one quantifiable number that we wanted to illustrate this evening is the impact to kind of the average household. And again, this assumes $175,000 assessed value home. On page 9, another way to quantify some of the benefits related to this transaction. And now here we're kind of looking at the sort of the township's budget, how it may impact that. And so the township is now taking some very good proactive steps and looking at some long-range planning with regards to its revenues and expenses, which is very prudent, especially in today's day and age with a lot of uncertainty out there, that kind of looking ahead to what may be around the corner and start planning for it well in advance. And so with that, there may be some personnel and other operating costs that are going to continue to rise in the future that'll more than likely put some pressure and stress on the township's budget. So in 1A, it's kind of the thought process is in order to mitigate or lessen the burden on the homeowner, we're obviously going to free up some funds. And when we say free up funds, that basically means we're going to lower expenses. And it's just not one-time expenses. These are ongoing annual expenses that the township has to pay. So by paying off the other debt, kind of the non-sewer debt, and here we're labeling it as general and open space fund debt, that'll reduce expenses, not just in 1 year, but in quite a few years, by approximately $281,000 per year. So obviously there's a big benefit to that. Also by funding the pension plan, and reducing that unfunded liability, which will therefore lower the annual required payment that the township needs to make. That we're still in conversation with the actuary. It's kind of a very complicated set of mathematics to do that. It's probably going to reduce expenses, again, on an ongoing basis by about $100,000. And so down in the table below, where it says annual reduction in township expenses, kind of lays out the various debt service reductions and the MMO reduction. Gets us to a little under $400,000 of annual reduction. Again, that's not one time. That's going to be an annual sustainable reduction in expenses of about $381,000. And so that will provide a lot of additional budget flexibility going forward from a planning perspective. So kind of overall, again, when we look at kind of the indicative rates that we saw, some of the impacts of the tap fee and some of those developments not having to pay a tap fee and some other things that Bernie had already gone over. We have those directly related to the sewer system. And then as far as other benefits from the township to the township residents that we talked about, such as they're in the blue box, paying off outstanding debt, funding the pension plan, funding for new capital projects, And one or two boxes that aren't on here that we can't really quantify at the moment, but we did talk about them in the first slide, are some of those unknowns. By shedding the risk, we're taking that burden off the sewer budget. Also by shedding that risk over to Pennsylvania American Water, a very well qualified operator to pass the torch to. We're kind of eliminating any of those potentials going forward. And basically what that results in there in the green circle, obviously the decreased expenditures on the budget of the township, which provides for budget flexibility, better planning, opportunities in the forward, and mitigation of future tax increases. So we feel very confident that through the bidding process, kind of the vetting through the RFQ process and the ultimate vetting through the RFP process, that the results that the township achieved met the goals and hit all the initiatives, are able to fund the initiatives that the township initially kind of set as part of this plan.
That said, for the presentation, so Michelle, if you would take a look at the folks that would like to have some questions at this time. If you would like to ask questions, Michelle will be controlling that. If you would please just state your name and address, and both Scott and Bernie will be able to answer your questions.
Okay, I got Chuck Note. Chuck Note.
Yeah, hi, Michelle. This is Chuck, 2137 East Horseshoe Drive. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Just to clarify the follow-up question from what I had before on the act for Horseshoe Drive for putting the sewer in. Is there a guarantee that American Water has to do that project? Or is it they're going to say, yes, we're going to do it, but they may not have to do it? Follow what I'm asking?
Yes, we do.
Yeah, we do plan on stepping into the commitment to do that project, and I actually think it'll be included as part of the asset purchase agreement that would be executed between the parties. So Mark Seller might be able to opine on that as well.
So
That's correct. The asset purchase agreement, which outlines the obligations of American Water, will include that project as one of their responsibilities.
So it'll be basically a contract written between the township and you saying this will be done.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, Chuck, this is Trace. In the asset purchase agreement, it lists all those projects that you saw on one of those slides that they went through. I think it's that's the one that Benny.
Correct.
You go right there. So number one, you see each one of those with the actual anticipated EDUs.
Right.
So for this year, we have Regal Oaks Phase 2A, and we have also the Ming Mortar project going on, and that includes the 7 at Gilbertsville Road that we're working for this year. So the plan we had going forward is each one of those, and an equivalent to hook those up as well. And as you heard in the brief, the bullet right below shows that those folks will not incur that connection fee. Chuck, does that answer?
Yeah, I mean, I'm just concerned that, I don't want them purchasing the sewer system for the entire township and say, oh, you know what? We're not going to hook up these 3 places.
And what you said, and it's a very good question. And we have that actually asset purchase agreement is one of the schedules. It's listed in there as well.
Okay.
And again, that asset purchase agreement is, if you go back to, I guess it's page 3, the timeline, assuming we continue to move forward, for April 20th, the ordinance will actually be approving that agreement between the township and Pennsylvania American Water. So again, within that ordinance, that's approving that asset purchase agreement that details that information.
Thank you.
Okay, next up we have Jenna Garrison.
Yeah, hi. I live on Horseshoe Drive 2109, and we have, an updated septic system. We don't need to be part of any sewer. And I'm concerned about the hidden fees. Like I understand about this tapping fee being covered by this Act 537 plan is what it seems. But, what's it going to cost to connect to the house? So now something I don't need, I have to pay a plumber to connect to my house and then continue to pay a bill that I don't currently have. I don't really understand, like, are we going to be forced to do this? Do we have a choice? You know, it just seems like some of us that do have updated septic systems might be getting the short end of the stick here. And I want to know if there's any plan for that. What contractors are going to be used? You know, is this contractors provided by the PA American Water? Is this local contractors? Are we supposed to find our own plumbers to do this? You know, those are the main concerns I have.
Okay, Michelle, can you answer that from the historical perspective, or Chris or Chuck weigh in on that?
So if it's my understanding, if the township does a project and you're within 150 feet of the sewer line, you're required to connect per our ordinance. That's if the township were not to sell the system and the township would do the project. I will defer to PA American Water to answer the question if the sale goes through and they are the hooking up those homes, whether or not they would be required to connect.
Thanks, Michelle. Yes, the mandatory connection ordinance would remain in place in order to ensure that the homes connected to the system that we're going to be investing in and installing the wastewater lines. And my understanding as well is that this is tied to work the township's done historically with the Department of Environmental Protection to identify areas within the township to receive public wastewater service. In regard to the question about the sewer lateral, again, the company would pay for the lateral up to basically the front of your property. And at that point, then it's the customer's responsibility to take the lateral from that point and run it into their home. Typically, you know, we see residents hire plumbers. And if there's communities like this where, you know, many residents are tapping in and they're all next to each other, we've seen those folks work together and bind their buying power to work with, you know, a plumber that might be able to give them a better price because they know they're going to work on so many specific homes. It's been our experience in the past.
So those of us who do have updated septic systems will get screwed, no matter, we'll get screwed out of this, is what you're saying. We will have to pay private plumbers. We will have to connect, even though we don't need it or want it, and pay an extra bill on top of one we don't already have. I just want that clarification for the record.
Yes, that's what the ordinance says. And if you want to have Chuck, if you want to comment on what our ordinance status is on that, please do.
Sure, Trace. The ordinance is pretty standard. Most municipalities that have sanitary sewer offered to the public require connections of the homes if a line is built, and 150 feet is what our ordinance says. So that's typical, and it wouldn't really matter if it was the township doing the work or if it would be PA American at this point. So there would be a requirement under the ordinance at least to connect.
Okay, Michelle. Thanks, Chuck. Michelle, who do we have next?
It looks like we have Stephanie Rowe.
Hi, Robert Rowe, 1290 Whitespire. I had a question the other day about what townships you benchmarked against to come up with this idea. I know several communities have done this in the past, but I wanted to know who you benchmarked against.
Scott, when you did the analysis, do you have any feedback? I'm not sure exactly what he's saying about benchmark in particular.
Yeah, I think it's probably fair to say, and others, John or Ben, you can chime in as well, but we really don't benchmark from community to community. Every community is a little bit different with the facts, whether it's the rates or whether it's the kind of the starting rates. You know, just to kind of give you an idea, you know, you heard wherever Pottsgrove's rates are right now. We've worked on other transactions where the starting rate was much lower. It was in the $300 and $400. So again, it's kind of apples and oranges. We've had some systems where they had a tremendous amount of deferred maintenance. So the winning bidder was going to have to put a lot of capital in immediately. So it really is kind of hard to just kind of benchmark and compare system to system. I would say I would say the valuation, kind of just looking specifically at Upper Pottsgrove and the facts and circumstances related to that, I would say the ultimate bid that was received, the high bid from Pennsylvania American Water, was within our valuation model range.
Okay. Other comment I have is American Water has 6 out of the top 10 most expensive providers in the entire United States. And I'm not sure this is the best move for the community as a whole. I don't know that our due diligence was done in finding this or working through this. Warrington, the community of Warrington did this last year. They had a 4-year guarantee of wastewater prices at a much lower rate than what we're being offered. And originally, on the other day when we had this presentation, you were talking about 2 to 3 to 4%, and now we're at 5.5, 6%. So we haven't even gone to signing all the documentation yet, and we're already up 2 points. So.
Okay, thanks. For the next questions, we're just asking questions now, so we'll all get to the comment and position later on in the process as we get closer to the 20th of April. So please just ask your questions and then allow the other folks to ask theirs as well. So who do we got next?
Looks like we have Tom Ziegler.
Hi, my name is Tom Ziegler. I'm at 279 Continental Drive. I have a 3-part question. I think the first part was already answered with the first question, but I want to make sure that I heard it correctly. And that is that if the sale goes through, part of the contract includes Horseshoe Drive, Bruce Drive, and Continental and Old Orchard. And that would be a done deal. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yes.
Correct.
Okay. The second part of that question then is, I understand you could be a year away from finalizing the sale. You have a sense of what the window might look like to implement?
Scott or Mark, you
To implement, I guess to implement what? So just kind of.
It's a Continental Drive.
Project.
Oh, for the actual projects themselves.
Yeah. All right.
I think Bernie should answer that.
Yeah, Bernie, do you want to kind of tackle that one as far as the timeline for the implementation of those projects?
That's a fair question. I think the question is based on, it's going to take some time to get, assuming the deal gets signed, it takes some time to get it approved. The question would be, at what point would Pennsylvania American then start to work toward, the construction of the wastewater system? Mike Guntram is our project engineer for Pennsylvania American. And I'm going to put Mike on the spot here a little bit just to see if he can dig up the timeline that was associated with that project and then maybe comment on what the expected timeline is for the construction of Mr. Ziegler. Are you on Continental Drive?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yeah, what we had planned to do, and this is going to be dependent on the process, but after the asset purchase agreement is signed, then we will be updating the township's 537 plan to reflect the change in ownership. And in that 537 plan will be a schedule. Schedule will reflect the completion of the projects that we are contractually obligated to complete. I would anticipate that the projects would be completed in late 2022, but that's going to be dependent on when the asset purchase agreement is signed, the length of time it takes to get regulatory approval, our negotiations with DEP, because DEP will have a say on the timeliness of the projects. But that's what I anticipate. I don't think there'll be any significant deviation from what the township had originally planned, but I don't want to commit to a timeline until things are more set in stone and we've had that chance to sit down with the department, and we'll codify that schedule, and that will be in a 537 plan that will be available to the public. So you will need a timeline. It'll be codified in the next, I want to say 4 to 5 months.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't think anybody's looking for a commitment, but I think there are people that are on the verge of, do they go ahead and put in a septic system now, or do they wait for this to come through? And that's very critical to a couple of people in this neighborhood, I know. So that's the reason for that question. So the third part of my question would be, does this include public water, or is this strictly sewer? Sewer.
It's just sewer.
Why would you not do water at the same time while you're running trenches?
I don't,
Well, actually, for the township, we only are concerned with the sewer piece. The water is Pottstown and Aqua in the area, a couple of the wells. So we're not involved in that from a township perspective. Michelle, do you have any more on that?
no, that's what I was gonna say. I was gonna say, if, you know, if the township retains the sewer system, the township wouldn't have control over Aqua or Pottstown Borough extending water lines. If the township sold the system to PA American Water, you know, it would still be, I don't believe PA American Water has any territory in Upper Pottsgrove for public water, if I'm not mistaken. So if they didn't, again, they wouldn't be able to run water lines. That would be up to the, you know, the two that have territory in our area, which I believe are only Aqua and the Borough of Pottstown at this time.
Would it make sense to try and coordinate that?
Bernie, any background on that from?
Yeah, certainly. I mean, we'd be, we're going to do the project. I think in that case, we'd want to determine, you know, who is the water provider. I'm sorry, excuse me, and in the area. And then, you know, it'll take a little like development work. I think the residents would want to get involved, and maybe we could work through the township to reach out to those public water providers and let them know that, yeah, there's a plan for the roads or the streets to be, you know, being constructed with wastewater utilities. And it's a great time to put a water line in. And as a matter of fact, you know, when Pennsylvania American has water systems and wastewater systems, we typically try to target putting those facilities in at the same time, so you don't have to rip the road up. And
Right.
you know, we can coordinate that with paving schedules and, you know, other benefits. I would ask, you know, if Mr. Ziegler brings up a good point, and I would want to caucus this with my team, but you know, I think, you know, we'd want to, we certainly wouldn't want to have anyone incur an expense if public wastewater is going to be provided in a near term. So where I'm going with this is I'd like to caucus with maybe the township and my team to see, you know, is there any reason why we couldn't do all these at the same time? I don't know if consecutive or you know, so that's something we'll take back and look into. So
Okay.
as to have folks that might have a failing system have to address it and then connect to the wastewater system.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Michelle, who we have up next?
Looks like we have, it looks like Martin has his hand up, but I'm going to go with the residents, and then we can let the commissioners, I guess, comment.
That's fine.
Okay, so we have John Ungerman.
I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yep, we can hear you.
Okay, two questions. First of all, if you pay off the open space debt, are you going to eliminate the earned income tax that's currently paying that? Number two, you gave projections of what the property tax increase would cost for the infrastructure, but you did not give any projections of what our sewer rate would be if we don't sell the system. Because I'm looking at the $183 and saying that's $15 a month versus a $40 a month increase in the sewer bill. I can do math.
Well, for the first one, this is Trace. For the first one, the decision on whether to eliminate a tax for the open space, that would need to go through the Open Space Committee to decide whether they wanted to do that. That is our item that we did pass to continue to look for different purchases of land across the township, and that would be a decision on both the open space and the Board of Commissioners. as far the cost of going forward if we kept the system. Scott, do you have some background on that through the analysis or where we're going with the analysis?
Sure. Yeah, I think we're in the analysis stage. We're conducting with the team, looking at future capital needs as well, working with the township's engineer and some other folks. I would say at a high level, we still have some more work to do, but at a high level, we're seeing the rates, probably about where they are now, give or take a little bit, with potentially some modest increases to cover some unknowns. But at this point, again, we're still in the review stage of it. But we're not, under current ownership, we're not anticipating at least any kind of very significant increases. But again, we're still working to fine tune that.
See, and that to me is part of your due diligence. It should have been done before we ever got to this point.
Well, it's an ongoing process, John, and we started this back in
You've
February.
had a year to do this.
Okay,
Mr. Slicker.
we're going through the analysis now. We got the numbers from the bid. It takes a while to get to the bid. So Michelle, who do you have next?
Hold on one second. We have Don Reed. Don Reed,
Yep, I'm here.
you're on.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yep, we can hear you.
Yeah, my name's Don Reed. I live at 61 Rock Road. I also should note that I am on the sewer committee, and I also sat on the Pottstown Sewer Authority for 5 years. My question is to PA America. There are two kinds of residents in our town: those who need sewer now, or those who are going to need it. And when you, in your explanation, I heard briefly that you would consider reaching out non-service people. Like I live out on Mock Road, it'd be a very long time before sewer ever got here. But typically, how do you handle that in your company by reaching out to other parts of the township that may not be under Act 537? My house is pretty much new. It's a 4-year-old house with a brand new system. And I would welcome sewer coming in here because these systems do take a lot to maintain. And again, I would just like to ask them how they approach the thought of expanding the system beyond any mandates. Thank you.
Thanks, Don. I appreciate the question. So, it's a good point that I wanted to bring up. So, when our company will do part of the service we provide is, we'll extend out to areas of communities that may want public water or wastewater, depending on what we're the provider of. Typically, what we do is we work with the residents in that community. We try to aggregate as many homes that may want to connect to the system. Now, as you know, there's a cost to doing this. But one of the other items that is different as well under our ownership is that, we will extend service under a couple different formats. One is the normal format where a developer may come in and want to run a, water or wastewater utility service to a new subdivision. And there we're working with the developer. The funds get put up. As customers connect, the developer will actually get a refund of part of the investment. But if there are areas of the community that have existing homes, they fall under a portion of our tariff called the bona fide service applicant portion. And by PUC rule and by PUC formula, the company comes up with an amount that it will invest per bona fide service applicant. So think of that as one home. So the way our formula works right now, we will put up the $15,000 toward the cost of an extension. So if there's one person, it's 15. If there's 10, it's 150,000. And in instances where there's been some density in areas, we've been able to run water or wastewater lines and completely fund it without having to have additional contributions, which will typically come from the entities that are getting the service. This is a pretty big difference in my experience from, I don't know if there's any other public water utility that puts up as much money on a bona fide applicant. And I don't believe most of the time, municipal systems are going to ask for the customers to pay for all of it and then charge a tap-in fee on top of that. the way the PUC works is, they are looking to have incentivize people to get on public utility service. So those costs they get back-ended into the rates that are created for the rest of the company, but it does create an incentive to have people be able to hook up the utility service. So, generally speaking, we would try to work with the local community and the residents and see if we could put a project together and come up with the funding mechanism.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Okay, Trace, it looks like we have somebody with the name of May. We just need you to state your name and address for the record, please. Hello? We have May that put their hand up. They're unmuted. I don't know what's happening, so I guess we'll
Yeah, go ahead.
back and go to the next person. Looks like we got Martin.
Hey.
Hey, sorry, we were trying to get all the residents' questions
no problem.
first.
So we supplied our rates since 1978. I see in the chart. Do we have PA Water's rates from 1978 as well? Can that be provided?
We have not, well, we haven't been asked for it, but we have.
Okay, can I ask you now for it?
We would have, we'd have some information on that.
Okay, so I guess Bernie, what Martin's asking for the rates, I guess with the same time period from 78 going forward, if it's possible to provide those.
We'll see how, I'll see how far back we go. We'll make an effort to get that back to, what was the year again?
78.
78.
Okay.
Okay, it looks like we got some more here. Let's see. We have, it's like we have, well, I'm trying to unmute, but it's not working. Okay, we have Robert Rowe again, it looks like.
Yes. Oh, actually, my wife had something to
I have
say.
a question. This
Okay.
I'm also at 1290 Whitespire. My question is, since you just got the bid and you're talking about doing your due diligence and trying to find out this information, why the urgency of going to putting this to a vote on the 20th? Why, in light of everything that's going on in our community and the world, why is this have to be done right now? Why couldn't this be tabled and you could have the time to really do the due diligence and see what's going to be best for our community?
Well, from my perspective, I think that we have been looking at this for quite a while. There's once after you get the bid, you have to go through some more detailed analysis. But as Scott's team is going and churning those numbers, I think that will be prepared before we go through the process we got coming up on the 14th and 16th. We've been having.
What process? I'm sorry, I'm missing.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, what process on the 14th and 16th? Because this is.
So what we're having on the 14th and 16th is continue on to expand what PFM puts together for us, coupled with we've had these discussions throughout the years since I guess before February on what we're trying to do with this thing. So we'll continue with these 14th and 16th, and also people have their comments and position on the 20th. We're able to do the communication that we're doing right now as well. So that's the intent.
Right, but this meeting, we were on Mondays. It's very similar, and some of the questions aren't being answered. So that's why, if it's just going to be a regurgitation of tonight's meeting on the 14th and the 16th, and you're not going to be able to answer some of our questions, then it almost feels like we have no voice, and it's just, this is a done deal and we're just getting lip service. And I don't mean to be disrespectful, and I apologize if I'm coming across that way, but to me, it's not making, I'm struggling to understand how this makes sense as our community. And I haven't seen anything presented to me that shows that, yes, this is what we need to do as a community.
Well, we're starting to get into the debate piece, but I'm kind of curious, what question are you saying that you didn't get an answer to?
Well, like John Ungerman earlier asked the question about, you know, some of our due diligence, and then
Which part? I think what he asked about was what was the projection if we did not sell it for the fees that would go forward. And I think Scott was saying we're pretty close to that, and we're thinking it's going to generally be about the same, given what the risk factors are involved in that. And when we're sitting at 860 right now, so we not only consider that piece of the fee, but there's several different factors involved with it. And I think you saw the amount, $400 for $4 million we're looking at for the building structure, the 1.7 of unfunded pension that we've been discussing for quite a while. So that's, if there's anything specific, but we're getting more into the comments and positioning piece of that. So if you have a specific question.
My question is why does this have to go to a vote on the 20th? That's my question.
That's where we schedule from it. That's for our time frame. We feel that's appropriate.
When you got the final bid in less than a month.
We've been working on, we're debating again. So you heard me. Anybody else, commissioners want to comment, feel free, but that's the schedule we're on. And we may at some point, as the questions go on the 14th and 16th, we'll take a look at it, but that's the schedule.
Okay, can I ask one final question, then I'll respectfully be quiet. What about people who don't have access to Zoom, who don't have this access to be able to understand and speak and listen to these? Are we disenfranchising members of the community that can't or don't know how to get on with these meetings? If they're not on Facebook, how do they know about these meetings? That's how we learned about it.
Yeah, so what's happening right now? So we went out today, was mailed a letter. It's also posted on our website. It's going to every resident in the township.
Still has not arrived.
Yeah, it was just dropped today. It goes to Phil and comes back. So it's coming with the email address of our township manager, who will be working with PFM to take those questions, get the response, put a consolidated question document together, list those, and then post them as well. And then Michelle will give them a notice that this was your question. You can reference it here, and any follow-on we'll go ahead and take a look at. But that's the intent. The thought was a hard letter, given what we have available for technology. We have the Zoom piece, we have our website, we have our mailing ability, and we did target everybody that was out there that we had an address on.
Right, but there's now been 2 meetings with leaving out all the people who didn't get a hard letter or don't have access to technology.
And actually, also we voted for the degree on 2 public meetings, and we're going to go for 4 right now. A couple of the meeting we're actually going to meet at.
Yeah, and Trace, I'll follow up on that. The letter dropped at the Southeastern Post Office today. So there's not going to be an extra delay in it going there and then coming back. They dropped it directly at Southeastern, so it should come in the next day or 2.
Good. Okay, well, good. Hopefully other people will be able to get the information they need.
Yes, ma'am. And they also have, once you have the reference of those meetings, and it's the dial-in information or the log information is on there as well, where to go to get that. Okay, Michelle.
Yeah, which hopefully they'll get in time before the next meeting.
Yeah, I think that'll happen. Okay, let's get, it looks like we got, do we have a Danielle on the phone? Oh, I guess not. She
Hi, yes, yep. I'm
Oh,
here.
Danielle, okay.
Hi, it's Danielle Leach. I'm at 1466 Sweetwater Way. Yeah, I'm just following up, Trace, again. I think, unfortunately, Stephanie probably just said the same thing I was thinking, and which was really, you literally just said not that long ago that you're still putting together the numbers, and John had made the comment that you've had a year, and yet now you're turning it back around and saying, well, you've had all this time that you've done your due diligence, and we're good to go. So which is it? I feel like you're talking out of 2 sides of your mouth right now. Really.
Well, sorry that's the case, but you heard what PFM said. They're the detail guys on that, and the one specific question is just a projection. What other one did you have besides the projection of the 861, say 860 going forward? I mean, when you say due diligence, that's the only thing I'm hearing right now is.
Where's the numbers? Where's the transparency to this community? And you're rushing a vote for what purpose? What purpose?
It's not a rushing a vote whatsoever.
It is rushing a vote. You don't have numbers yet. You haven't been transparent to the full community yet. And you're rushing and you're pushing forward with a date that is less than 2 weeks away. I'm sorry. That's,
I'm sorry.
I don't understand
what
why.
we're moving towards.
I don't understand why. I'm a project manager, by the way, and I don't understand why.
Okay.
I run worldwide projects in a huge
We're debating.
global company.
You can make those charges all you want when it comes to comment time. So that's what we're scheduled to do. So what we got next, Michelle?
Hold on one second here. Looks like we got John and Candace Weiss.
Hi, this is Candace Weiss. I'm at 1468 Meadowview Drive. And I guess my question is the same as everybody else's. You know, I was kind of late to the game with this as well, and I've been doing a lot of reading and research and talking to some people, and I just don't understand the rush. According to the 2014-2018 census, there's 1,886 households in Upper Pottsgrove. Tell me if that's wrong, but I'm looking at the census website. You have 45 people participating in this meeting tonight. How many of which are a part? Please do not interrupt me. This is my turn.
You have a question, please?
I do have a question. It's coming. I'm giving some background information, which is what the residents are asking from you, and we're not getting it. So I'm going to give it to you. So my question is, how can you possibly think that you are representing the people of Upper Pottsgrove and really reaching them to allow them to have a proper voice in this conversation, not debate, conversation, when you have 45 people represented, and how many of those are from the specific water company? Why are we rushing this vote? The world is currently shut down. I am a school teacher. I am teaching my students. I'm teaching my 2 own children, and I'm raising a toddler in this craziness. Why are we rushing this? You are not giving people enough time to look at this. And the other side of the coin, you did a wonderful job padding this and showing how wonderful this would be for everybody. But I want to see, you know, what if we don't do this? And what is the other side of this? What are some of the negatives? Because to me, the fact that we pay over $300 a quarter for water and sewer.
You're making an argument. Please ask the question.
I just did. I have 2 questions. Question number 1, why are we rushing this vote? Question number 2, what's the other side of the coin? And I'm sorry, but I think we all have our equal amount of time on here. And with only 45 people out of 1,886 households being represented here right now, I think you have the time, especially if you're trying to rush a vote in 2 weeks.
We went with the schedule. We're going with the 20 as of now, 20 April.
Why can't we be flexible with it?
The mailing went out today, which is
ridiculous because this is now the second meeting. Why are we rushing it?
Michelle, who do we have next?
Wow.
Hold on one second. We got a bunch of people here. Let's see, Doug Kern?
Yes, this is Doug Kern here. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, 1286 Whitespire Circle. Can you please go to item, I think it's 2, where you had the path of how we got here? I have a couple questions on that. 3, yeah, that's good. So my first question is, I believe you said you got 2 bids, is that correct?
Yes.
Are those bids public? Can we see them somewhere?
Mark, Chuck, anything on the bidding process on those documents? When do we?
Yeah, they're public. They're public records. They were opened and they're available for view as far as I'm concerned.
Where are they available at?
The township has them.
So just send Michelle a note if you want to see those.
Yeah, you would have to fill out a right to know request form. It's on our website.
Yeah,
This time you can't come into the office to do that. Our offices are closed.
That's one in the questions. I appreciate the information.
Yeah,
what
so
about the other bid? Can you give me some information as to the criteria as to why you selected the company you did over the other?
Yeah, well, it was, and Scott and Ben, you went through the process, but it's the highest bidder that comes in. So just to give you the actual number.
So it's just cost. That's it, just cost.
Yeah. Scott, Ben,
Well,
anything?
it was just cost for the RFP, but through the RFQ process earlier on, that was back in last summer, that, in order to shortlist bidders to move forward, There were criteria, financial criteria, kind of customer service, operational. I think to let the teams into the data room to proceed and sign the confidentiality agreements, we had to ensure that they were good firms to enter into the process. And of course, both Pennsylvania American and Aqua kind of both met all the criteria to continue to move forward. So there are basically two rounds of vetting.
So is any of that information in the letters that's being mailed out, or are we essentially flying blind as we can't get into view any documentation related to this matter?
Which documentation?
Do you include any additional documentation as to the qualifications and the rationale behind how they got qualified and why one bid was selected over the other?
Well, I think Scott pretty much answered those questions. Scott, did you leave anything out of that one or what?
No, this is a new question. Did you put it in the mailing? Did you put the information in? I can't access the information likely before the 20th because I can't even walk into the township building to get the information where it's located.
Well,
I'm asking what's in the letter.
It states in the letter there's the high bid was $13,750,000. That's
Okay. Final question. What can we do as people that own property to change the date of April 20th?
Well, it's upon the commissioners to determine what date they want to put it on the agenda. And vote
That's
for.
not my question. My question is, what can we do? Not what can the commissioner do? What can we?
That's up to you as a
For
resident.
my question.
It's up to you as a resident.
No, that is not an answer to what can we do. It's up to us is not an answer. What action do I need to petition to change the date? How does this work?
Well, you're making your comments now. If you want to make the comments when we do the comments,
I'm asking question after question. How do we do this? What action do I need to take?
you're doing it. You just made your comment, and it's not even time for comments. We're going with.
Was the date changed?
Okay.
That's my question. How do I change the date?
You
What
can't
needs to
change the
happen?
date.
Okay,
Okay,
that's it.
who we got next?
Thank you for giving me an answer. Fantastic. Mute me and move on.
Let's see, we got
Not muted yet. I'll keep talking.
Martin.
Let's go.
Martin? Hello, Martin?
Hello?
Martin?
Yeah, hi.
Okay, sorry.
Good.
Buttons aren't working right.
Okay, so some questions on the 537 stuff. So we got a rough date of the 2022, possibly. What about new 537?
Martin, what do you mean?
Like if we identify another area.
Chris, you were talking about
the
the
our 530. Is it still our 537 plan?
Yes. Yeah, the
Okay.
township still has control of the 537.
So if we have to add somebody to the 537 plan, would the township be liable to put money into it if it doesn't meet one of those bona fide $15,000 homes?
Bernie, I think what Martin's asking, so the 537 that you guys are taking over, the ones we've already scheduled and have approved by DEP going forward, if there's some other identifiable area that you're going to extend some type of sewer to, and I think you said for each household around that, the American Water would put in 15,000. The 537, Chris Pelka, is relatively close. We can't add to that, or can we? I think was Martin's asking. And also, what would be the process to hook those folks up with any extension that it's farther and they're not within the 537 plan? Martin, is that kind of what you're getting at?
Kind of, yeah.
Bernie or Chris Pelka?
Yeah, at this point, I don't believe that the township has any intention on expanding which communities are included in the 537 plan. That plan was approved back in 2011 for the certain communities to be serviced. And I believe at this point, that's the extent of it. Unless there become extreme circumstances in some other community with failing systems and failing water, at that point, I'm not sure how PA American would handle.
Well, let's say that the Mock Road, there's small parcels out there in some areas that identifies as a trouble spot, and we have to add that to a 537 plan.
So Martin, this is Chuck. I guess the 537 plan, in my view, is always a fluid document. The township, the commissioners would oversee and control areas that they felt needed to be serviced by public sanitary sewer. So that would be a decision the elected officials would make if there was a need for public sewer in different areas. And they would still go through the sewer planning process with DEP. And my understanding is the only difference now is that PA American would be the provider of the public sanitary sewer, and the details on the funding would have to be worked out. But my understanding, and anybody can correct me if I'm wrong, is that the township in its sewage planning is not taking financial responsibility for extending those lines just by planning or expanding the 537. That's just like we do right now. We look at areas that need service and come up with a timeline that it's reasonable to do. Chris has indicated right now he doesn't see any areas that would require service expansion. So I hope I was kind of answering your question, Martin.
I would rather hear from PA Water, America Water there to like.
Sure. Well, they can weigh in and either agree with me or differ in their opinion. So Bernie, go ahead.
Well, I'll concur. I mean, everything Chris and Chuck just mentioned is the manner in which a 537 plan is managed, and it's managed within a municipality. So, Chris mentioned to the extent that the 537 plan is identified the areas to receive public wastewater service. Martin, to your question, there's my understanding of the 537 plan is, it's a plan to provide, it's a management of wastewater within the community. So there may be areas in a community that are inaccessible to public wastewater, and you wouldn't be able to do that. We've run across rural systems in western part of the state where it would have been $30,000-$40,000 a customer, to connect to the systems, and the department, recognizes that there's a financial component of providing wastewater service. So that does go into the equation. What I will say though is that the $15,000 that we contribute, is pretty significant toward being able to get wastewater service into the communities, and that number could even be higher if there were existing commercial buildings. We would base it on a revenue component. So that 15 could be, much higher than 15,000.
Does that 15 ever go up as years go on?
It does. As a matter of fact, a couple of years ago, it was 12, and a couple of years ago before that, it was 10.
Okay. I have several other questions here. If a new customer that on a pre-existing home needs a grinder pump, who pays for that?
The customer would own and operate the grinder pump.
So they would be paying for that.
Right.
As right now, we pay for that.
Our grinder pumps under our tariff for the customer's responsibility.
Okay. What about capital improvements in Pottstown?
Well, we would take over the agreement and the liability for those improvements to the extent they were a part of the arrangement for capacity with.
So like our 4 to 6%, whatever we have to pay.
Right, I'm stepping into that obligation.
Okay.
Martin, just to be clear, they assume all our obligations under the current treatment capacity agreement with the borough authority. So okay. Yes, we're out of that.
Yep. I think you mentioned something about grants last time. Are we responsible to help you apply for grants, or how does that work?
No, you're not responsible to help apply for grants, but if we came across an instance, and we work with communities, an area of the community we can try to get wastewater to, there might be a possibility that the township could become a partner, or the municipality could become a partner and apply for some grant funding that's under the municipal ownership under the municipality to help try to offset costs to be able to get people more service. We're certainly willing to open up, our, often other instances that, our contribution could be applied toward a project that would count toward a matching fund if we're under a grant or a loan program. So we've leveraged it to kind of get, double the value in certain instances.
We have the project going on that I think we sent it out for bid, the Ming Moyer Road project. And we also
Send that out for bid, yeah.
we also sent out for a grant for that, I believe. If for some reason we don't get the grant and that project doesn't go, that's part of our 537 plan. Do you take that upon yourself too?
My understanding right now is it's the township's obligation to complete the Ming project you mentioned. So
because it's part of our 537 plan that you guys are going to take over.
Right, and the understanding is that the township's going to complete that project. Right? If you're asking if it falls through,
yeah,
we'd be willing to sit down and look at that project to see if it fits under that $15,000 criteria, or other ways to make it happen.
Martin, if you remember, Martin, the township didn't put that project out to bid yet, but the township authorized the funding, the total funding for that Ming Drive Moyer Road project in their budget for 2020,
right,
regardless of the grant.
Right. Who handles inspections of your sewer lines, or would it still be our code enforcement people?
Yeah.
Okay. And in the past, many years ago, when my development had an issue with I&I, they actually asked to come into the houses to look for sump pumps. Is that something that you guys do as well? How do you monitor people putting sump pumps into the wastewater, things like that?
Yeah, it's an important component because it does lead to I&I. So I'm going to ask if you could turn the mic on for Jim Gable. He's our operations manager that covers the area. And if Jim's not available, Joe Woodward.
Okay, let me try to find Jim Gable. I don't, is that Gable? Here we go. Is this Jim Gable?
Yes, it is. Thank you. Can you repeat that question again?
How do you protect yourself or inspect for I&I for people like inside their homes?
Well, the very first thing we would do, we'd come in and do a full assessment of the system. And that would TV the lines, we'd do a manhole inspection and everything like that right up to the property line. We don't do smoke testing, and we would monitor, most likely put flow meters in zones just to kind of figure out which way the I&I is coming from and start narrowing it down from there.
So if somebody has a sump pump, you don't really have an idea of if it's actually going in?
No, we
And you'd never ask to inspect somebody's home?
Working with the township, and when they houses, when they sell their houses or something like that, then that inspection should pick that up.
Yeah, the township doesn't require a sale inspection at this time.
Okay.
So how long are these bids good for?
Typically, in the bid process, the bids are usually good for about 60 to 90 days. I just need to double check on the exact date for this one.
And that would be from the second offer received, so it would be the March 20th date?
Yes.
So we can really push this off to the May 20th. That would be a 60-day, at least. Okay, I think that's it for me right now, thanks.
All right, let's see, we got Chuck Note. Hold hold on. It's not working for me to unmute him. I'm sorry. Chuck Note?
It's actually Rebecca Note, 2137 Horseshoe. Question regarding the Act 537. Chuck, I know you mentioned it's a fluid, ongoing act. Previously in the meeting tonight, we mentioned that moving the ownership, I believe, of the Act 537 over to PA Water. When that moves over, is the ownership the only thing that can change on that Act 537, or can other components of that 537 be changed at that time?
If you're asking me, it's the Township Act 537 plan, so that the township controls the growth, the expansion of that plan. PA American must follow the provisions or the limitations of that plan. I'm not sure I understood the rest of your question, or I'm answering your question or the question you're asking. If so, can you try again, or did I get that or not?
Sure. So earlier in the meeting, the comment was made that if the sale went through, the Act 537 would need to be transferred to PA Water. Is that correct?
I'm not so sure the plan gets transferred.
The name on the ownership?
Is it the name on the ownership that gets transferred?
They operate under the plan, and I guess I'll defer to Chris Pelka on that, but I still believe it's our Act 537 plan.
That's correct. The township's plan as required by state law.
Okay.
So the township remains in control of changing that act. The new owner wouldn't change the what's in it.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay.
If you think the PA American can't go and then start changing things in the township, that's a document. That's an obligation of the governing body in all municipalities to regulate and control and provide sanitary sewer for their residents.
Okay.
Typically there is some degree of collaboration, exchanging information with the utility company that owns the system. But the township has the responsibility to adopt and revise the plan as required.
Okay. That answers. Thank you.
Okay, next we have, trying to unmute them, sorry. It's like it's delayed or something here. We have John and Candace Weiss. Hello?
I didn't. Oh no, I already made I already asked my question. It's not time for comments. I already asked my question. Sorry, Michelle. I don't know why.
Okay, that's okay. No problem. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, let's see. We have Don Reed.
Yes, Don Reed, 610 Rock Road. I have a follow-up question.
Yeah,
The name on, yeah,
Name
you're right. I did hear that.
Anyway,
We gotta meet somebody else. Hold on.
can you hear me okay, Michelle?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. In this little coordinated attack they just had of like 4 or 5 people, I did hear one question that I think was pretty good that maybe the commissioners can elaborate on. I think it was on slide 2, if you can go to that. Yeah, slide 2, number 2, part E. Eliminate risk. I think that is a very big subject. There's the sewer system is going to be a big liability at some point. At some point, it's going to have to be repaired, and we just don't know what those numbers are going to look like. We could be seeing rates that are going to be considerably higher just to plan for that. And I think the commissioners should probably elaborate on that a little bit more, saying, this is a big plus by eliminating the risk or doing some risk management. And it's just my comment. And I know someone had asked that. I don't think it was quite addressed, but if they feel maybe that would be a good idea to address that. Thank you. That's all I have.
Okay, let's see if we have any more here. Trace, do you want me to unmute the people on the phone to see if they have questions, or?
Trace is muted.
Oh, he is. Did I do that?
Can you hear me now?
Oh, we can
Yeah.
hear you now. Trace, do you want me to unmute the people on the phone to see if they have questions?
Looks like we have 1, 2, 3.
Yeah.
See if you can get contact with them.
Okay. Is this Brett Hoffman on the telephone? Mr.
Hello,
Hoffman?
yes.
Do you have any questions for the board or the folks on the call?
Well, actually, I do. You had mentioned that PA American Water had the highest bid at $13.7 million. Did anybody do any, I know you said you had your own analysis done on that, but did you have a consultant valuation for that? I mean, is $13.7 million a good number? Is the water system, maybe worth $20 million?
So we still have the long process to go as we go through that evaluation. So Scott, you want to talk about how it's evaluated and all those numbers that are put in front of the PUC so they can approve the thing?
Sure. So again, we did our initial valuation back in the spring of 2019, and again, the bid came in at the very high end of our range. So that was sort of one criteria to measure against, and then assuming the bid is accepted from American, then we kind of start the process to get things moving along with the PUC. So after sort of the initial step is to get an engineer on board to provide maybe a little bit more robust asset inventory of the system, and then both the township and Pennsylvania American will do their own independent valuations. They'll hire different companies that have been basically qualified by the state to do the valuation, and then that all that information kind of goes together and submitted with the PUC. So that'll all take place over the next, say, 3 to 4 months or so. But to answer your initial question, yes, there was an initial valuation done, and we feel that this bid is very much a good bid.
Okay, thank you.
All right, so we have a couple more down here. Let me just get to them. So we have a 215-666-2485. Is that you, Evan?
It sure is. I was at the Pottstown meeting, and now I'm at yours, and I never had to leave my chair. So I missed most of the presentation, but I saw when you were going through the presentation, it looked like another slide had been added for a comparison of township rates. It went by very quickly, but if Trace could go, I guess, forward in this presentation, it looked like there was one that came about the time. So that,
right there.
yes, that one.
Do you see it, Evan?
Right there.
Yeah, that's the one. Yeah, that's been added since the last meeting, correct?
That's correct.
Yes, there's actually 2 new slides, I think, Evan.
Okay, hold on. So I just captured that one.
And then I think it's the last one, or the second to last one, maybe.
Two new slides.
Yeah, 2 new
Yeah,
slides.
what's the other one?
Look forward. That one?
That one.
Oh, 8 and
2
9.
new. There we go. That
Yeah,
one.
that one looks good. Okay. All right, I don't want to hold everyone up. I just wanted to get the newest information so you can move on.
There
Thanks,
was one more
Evan.
slide, Michelle. There's one more slide
Oh,
behind.
one more. There you go,
Evan, did
Evan.
you get this last one?
Hold on, let me see. No, I did not. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, I should be good. Thanks again.
Thanks,
right, thanks.
Evan. Okay, I think we got 2 more. Let me go back down here. So I have somebody with a phone number 302-598-7140. Hello?
No question. No question.
questions? Okay, thank you. And then the last one I have is this one. Hold on one second, Trace here. 302, is this the one I just, okay. Is this the one I just did? 302-987-7140? Hello?
Yeah, no questions.
No questions. Okay, I think we got everybody then.
Looks like we, that John, I think it's John Beeler has a question.
Okay, I missed that. Oh, there's a couple more questions. Hold on. All right, John Beeler.
Yes. John Beeler, I'm the chairman of the sewer committee for the township. I just wanted to put some numbers out there that people can identify. The projects that are identified as will being completed by American Water is the Regal Oaks 2B, Continental Drive, Orchard Drive, and Horseshoe Bruce Drive. To just put some numbers to that, that's 133 EDUs. Multiply that by the $5,500 fee that the township charges for the connection fee. That is $731,500. The cost to install these projects, looking at Regal Oaks, will be approximately $500,000. Now, these are just rough estimates. I'm not an engineer, but I can tell you through past experience that these numbers are comparable. Concord Drive, Orchard Drive, that is approximately $2.5 million outlay. And Horseshoe Bruce Drive, I'm estimating $2 million. So we're looking at a $5 million outlay with a recovery of $731,500. That's what's talked about in the existing slide that enumerates the cost if we retain the system. So that would be a great impact on the rates going forward. Just wanted to put that out there. These are not engineered numbers, but they are numbers that I feel confident are very close to the cost of those installations. That's my comment.
Thanks, John. Okay, let's see. We now have, we have Doug Kern.
Yeah.
Mr. Kern, you have another question?
Yes, I have two questions. One, since John just spoke, my question is on his comment of that having a great impact on the rates going forward. Can he clarify what he means by that? What's a great impact? Are our rates going to potentially go down?
They would go up because the cost to install those would have to be either through a bond issue, a borrowing of some kind by the township. The township does not have a budget surplus at this time.
Thank you. My second question was on slide 2, number 2E. This was brought up as a point that maybe wasn't emphasized during the presentation. To eliminate the system risk with exploring the sale because of a system failure. So my question is, if the system fails after it's sold, isn't that still going to be an impact for all the people that have to pay for the system to be fixed? I mean, the rates are going to go up regardless. This is a system risk elimination for the township. Is that correct? That's not for the homeowners.
Bernie, you want to hit that a little bit on the risk, spreading the risk out and what it means when American Water purchases it as compared to risk?
So, by way of example, maybe a pump station fails or, is overloaded hydraulically for whatever reason. In that instance, the township would bear the burden of repairing that, and the costs would be allocated to the township's customer base of 1,500 or so customers. If Pennsylvania American owns that, Pennsylvania American would take on that obligation, and then any of the costs associated with that would get put into the company's rate base, over which it would be spread the 700,000 plus customers. So, there's the cost is significantly mitigated over the ability to spread it over a higher customer base.
So that's fine. Thank you for that answer. My last question is for Bernie. Since I'm assuming you were involved in the bid, can you tell us how long the bid is valid for? Is it 60 days or 90 days?
I don't have that in front of me, so I'll defer to what Scott said, but it's usually what he said. It's in that range, so I'd have to find it. That's something we can readily find.
What do we got next, Michelle?
Yeah, just so you know, Mr. Kern, any questions that are not answered, via the meetings and ones that are emailed to me directly. As Trace pointed out at the beginning of the meeting, in case you didn't hear, those questions and answers will be formulated and they will be posted so that folks can see what questions may have been answered asked via email, and then ones in the meetings that weren't able to be answered at the meeting.
And they're posted where, on Facebook?
They'll be posted on Facebook and on the website.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. All right, looks like we have one more here, Trace. I'm trying to unmute them. We have Danielle. Do you have another question?
Yeah, I actually was wondering if you could go back to, I'm sorry, I forget exactly which slide it was. It was the one right before the one Evan had wanted to see, with the rate increases in the percentages and the timeline. Thank you. My question was, yeah, the one, sorry, you just had it on. Yeah, this one right here. My question was, and I think that this might have been pointed out, but I do just want clarification that these percentages have changed since the previous meeting a couple days ago. Can somebody confirm that?
Well, Scott, I think these are calculated percentage. That wasn't on the slide before, was it not?
No, it was not on the slide before.
Right.
The monthly.
Okay, so this is new information as well then.
Yeah, they say
The little blue box is new information. The chart itself was part of the slides, previous slides.
Thank you.
Okay.
Just thank you for the clarification.
Yes, we're gonna apply for
You're welcome.
grants.
Okay, so let's unmute her lower hand. I don't think we have any others. Let me just double check then, if you can double check with me, because it's late.
I don't see any others.
Okay, I don't see any others either, Trace.
Okay, good. So we'll move now to, we want to notify the public of what's going on in a more formal fashion so they can start authorizing our attorneys to go ahead and advertise what's going on with this. So Chuck, I'll ask you to talk about what we're going to do next, and it's the authorization to allow you to do the advertisement and whatever else you want to put with that piece. Chuck? Chuck Gardner, is Chuck muted, Michelle?
Hold on, let me find him. Chuck's dead.
You got it, Michelle, because I see him.
Yep, I got it. Chuck, are you unmuted now?
I don't know. Am I?
Yeah.
Yeah, now I can hear you. Sorry about that.
I think you muted me before, Michelle.
I think I did. I'm so sorry. It's late.
Okay, so this is for Trace and the board. I understand that looking back at slide 3 and the timeline that was presented, at this point, the vehicle that the board would use to move the transaction forward would be an ordinance. The ordinance would approve the purchase agreement. And from a procedural standpoint, the next logical step based on your timeline is authorization to prepare and advertise the ordinance. Obviously, that's not approving the ordinance or approving the deal, but if you're looking at the April 20th date, both myself and Mark would need the authorization to prepare the ordinance, advertise it, so there could be future discussion on the ordinance at the meeting on the 20th.
Okay, thanks, Chuck. Michelle, if you would please, can you unmute? If we need to have Kathy and Renee and Martin and Dave all good to go. So as soon as we
Okay,
unmute,
so
check.
Martin's unmuted. Let me find. Here's Dave. Dave is unmuted. That's fine.
I think I just got Kathy.
Kathy is unmuted. And Martin's the other one. And Martin is unmuted.
Martin?
So do we have Martin?
Renee, you gotta get Renee.
Renee, okay. I was missing somebody, sorry. Let's see, where's Renee? Okay, Renee is unmuted.
Renee?
Yep.
Okay, so Martin, can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Kathy?
Yes.
Dave?
Yes.
Renee?
Yes.
Okay, as Chuck just stated on our authorization to advertise, I'll need a motion to do that.
I'll make that motion to authorize the advertisement for the April 20th meeting.
I need a second.
I'll second that.
Hearing a second. Discussion?
Yeah, I got a question. When we advertised this meeting, was it for sewer purposes or was it for,
And any other business that may come before the board.
but it was specifically made for sewer?
Yes.
Yes, it
So
was
we're
a
kind of like
special,
sneaking this in?
no, because this is sewer related. You're not sneaking
Okay.
anything in. This is absolutely related to what you're talking about.
Correct.
No sneaking.
And Martin, whenever we do a special meeting advertisement, even if it's a budget meeting, we always do put the caveat per Chuck's recommendation to say, and any other business that may come before the board, just in case, there is an issue that needs to be addressed at that meeting that we didn't anticipate.
Is there any public comments on that action?
Let's see. I don't see any hands up unless you want me to ask the people on the phone, but I don't see.
Okay. That said, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Against?
Nay.
One nay. Okay, motion carries 4-1. And that concludes tonight's meeting. So thank you very much for attending, and we'll talk to you soon.
Thank you.
Thanks, Trace.
Okay, thanks, everybody.
Thanks, John.
Have a good evening.
Same to you.